Captain Jake Morrison pressed his face closer to the observation window of the Earth Defense Station. His coffee had gone cold in his hand, forgotten as he watched the dying ship crawl toward them through the darkness of space. The vessel looked like someone had smashed together pieces from 20 different starships and hoped for the best. Smoke leaked from cracked seams in the hull, and entire sections were dark where the power had failed.
"Captain."
"They're sending another message," Lieutenant Amy Burke said from behind him at the communications console. Her voice carried the same tension that had been building in the command center for the past hour. Jake turned away from the window. "Play it." The speakers crackled to life, with a voice speaking broken, heavily accented English. "Earth Station, this is refugee vessel Wanderer. We request asylum. We have 317 souls aboard. Many injured. Please respond." It was the same message they had been broadcasting for hours, ever since they had limped into the outer edge of Earth's solar system. Jake looked around at his crew. They all knew what this meant. The Galactic Council had made its position very clear when they had sent their formal message 2 days ago. These refugees were unwanted. They were genetic defects, social outcasts, political troublemakers that no civilized world should harbor. Every major species in the galaxy had already turned them away. The refugees had tried the Torvan homeworld first, then the Shroth colonies, then a dozen other systems. Each time, they had been denied docking rights and forced to move on. Their ship was falling apart. Their supplies were nearly gone. Earth was their last hope. "Get me a direct line to Admiral Harris," Jake said quietly. Amy worked her console for a moment, then nodded. The Admiral's face appeared on the main screen, looking tired and older than his 50 years. "Let me guess, Morrison. You're calling about our unexpected visitors?"
"Yes, sir."
"They're in bad shape. If we don't let them dock soon, that ship is going to break apart." The Admiral rubbed his eyes. "You know this is going to cause problems. The Council has already threatened trade sanctions if we harbor these people. They're calling them dangerous criminals." Jake glanced back at the dying ship on his monitors. "Sir, I've reviewed their files. These aren't criminals. Most of them are just people who were born into the wrong social class or spoke out against their governments. The Council stripped them of citizenship and dumped them in space to die." "I know," Harris said heavily. "I've read the same files. But taking them in means Earth becomes the enemy of every Council species. We're talking about economic warfare, possible military posturing. Are we ready for that?" The command center had gone completely silent. Everyone was listening now, even though they pretended to focus on their stations. Jake thought about the message that kept repeating from that broken ship. 317 souls. Many injured, sir. With respect, I didn't join Earth Defense to leave people to die in space because some alien bureaucrats think they're not worth saving. Admiral Harris was quiet for a long moment. Then a small smile crossed his face. "I was hoping you'd say that." "Permission granted, Captain. Bring them in." Jake felt tension he hadn't realized he was carrying drain from his shoulders. "Thank you, sir. Don't thank me yet. This is going to get complicated fast." Harris out. The screen went dark. Jake turned to Amy. "Open a channel to the Wanderer." "Channel open, sir. Refugee vessel Wanderer. This is Captain Jake Morrison of the Earth Defense Station. You are cleared for docking at Bay 7. Medical teams will be standing by. Welcome to Earth space." There was a pause. Then the voice came back, thick with emotion. "Thank you, Captain. Thank you. We did not think anyone would help us." Jake watched as tugboats moved out to guide the damaged ship to the docking bay. He tapped his communication badge. "Morrison to Medical Bay. Dr. Chen, prepare for mass casualties. We've got over 300 incoming various species, unknown injuries." "Understood, Captain." "We'll be ready." Jake left the command center and headed down to the docking bay. He wanted to be there when the refugees arrived. Lieutenant Chris Baker fell into step beside him, along with a security team of 6 personnel. They were armed, but Jake had ordered them to keep their weapons holstered, unless absolutely necessary. "Do you think they're dangerous, sir?" Chris asked as they walked. "I think they're desperate," Jake replied. "And desperate people can be unpredictable. But according to the intelligence we have, They're not violent. They're just unwanted. The docking bay was a hive of activity. Medical personnel were setting up triage stations. Engineers were preparing emergency atmospheric controls. Since they weren't sure what environmental requirements all the different species would need, supplies were being stacked and organized. The docking clamps engaged with a series of heavy thuds that echoed through the bay. Warning lights flashed as pressure equalized between the station and the refugee ship. Jake positioned himself near the airlock with his security team spread out behind him in what he hoped was a welcoming but cautious formation. The airlock door hissed and groaned as it opened. The smell hit them first, a mixture of unwashed bodies, recycled air, and something else that Jake couldn't identify. Then the first refugee stepped through. She was tall, easily 7 feet, with 4 arms and a body covered in chitinous plates that looked like dark green armor. Her plates were cracked and discolored in places, and one of her arms hung limply at her side. She had 3 eyes arranged in a triangle pattern on her face, and they focused on Jake with an intensity that made him fight the urge to step back. "I am Kesra," she said in that same accented English they had heard over the radio. "Leader of these refugees? You are Captain Morrison?" Jake stepped forward and extended his hand, palm up in the universal gesture of peace that most species recognized. "I am welcome to Earth space, Kesra." She looked at his hand for a moment, then carefully reached out with one of her 3 functioning arms and touched his palm with what looked like fingers but felt more like warm stone. "We thank you for your mercy. We have nowhere else." Behind her, more refugees were emerging from the airlock. Jake saw beings with scales, beings with fur, beings that seemed to be made of something that flickered and changed color. Some walked on 2 legs, others on 4 or 6. Some were humanoid in shape, others were completely alien. All of them looked exhausted, hungry, and afraid. Medical teams moved forward carefully, guided by Dr. Chen, who had clearly done her homework on alien biology. She approached each refugee slowly, explained what she wanted to do, and only proceeded when they gave permission. Jake was proud of how professional his people were being. "How long have you been traveling?" Jake asked Kesra as they watched the medical teams work. "For months in this ship," she replied, "but many of us have been refugees much longer. I left my homeworld 2 years ago when they discovered my genetic variation. On Vexor, such things mean exile." "What kind of variation?" Kesra's translator device clicked in Word. "I have high cognitive function. In my species, this is considered a deformity. Those in my caste are meant to be simple laborers. Intelligence makes us dangerous to the social order." Jake stared at her. "They exiled you for being too smart." "Yes. Many here have similar stories. The Orothi over there," she gestured to a small being whose skin glowed with soft blue light. "He was born with the wrong pattern." The Kelther family in the corner. They protested when their government culled an entire generation of children deemed genetically inferior. "We are all unwanted for reasons your species would find absurd." More refugees kept coming through the airlock. Jake did a quick count and realized they were going to need more space than they had prepared. He tapped his badge again. "Morrison 2 operations. We need to open additional sections for refugee housing. At least 3 more levels." "On it, Captain," came the reply. A young Orothi, the species Kesra had mentioned, approached them slowly. He was small, maybe 4 feet tall, with large eyes and that strange glowing skin. He held something in his hands, and when he got close enough, Jake saw it was a drawing. The being had somehow drawn a detailed picture of the Earth Defense Station using what looked like charcoal or ash. "For you," the Orothi said in surprisingly clear English. "Thank you for letting us live." Jake took the drawing carefully. The detail was incredible. Every window and solar panel, perfectly rendered. "This is beautiful. What's your name?" "Zilk. I am an artist, but on my world, one with my pattern cannot create art. Only those with red patterns may do so. I have blue patterns, so I was forbidden." Jake looked at the drawing again, then at the young alien. "Well, Zilk, on Earth, anyone can be an artist if they have the talent. And you clearly do." Zilk's glow brightened. which Jake guessed meant he was happy. The young alien hurried back to his group, and Jake heard him excitedly telling the others what the human captain had said. "Your species is strange," Kesra said, watching this exchange. "The galaxy says humans are primitive and emotional. They say you make decisions based on feelings rather than logic." "Maybe we do," Jake admitted. "But I'd rather be emotional and help people than be logical and let them die." Kesra made a sound that her translator couldn't interpret, but Jake thought it might have been a laugh. "Perhaps that is why you are still young as a spacefaring species. You have not yet learned to be cruel efficiently." Dr. Lisa Grant stood in the middle of what used to be a military training facility in Montana and tried not to feel overwhelmed. 2 weeks had passed since the refugees arrived at the Earth Defense Station, and now they were here, on actual Earth. Soil, looking around with expressions that ranged from wonder to terror. The facility had been stripped of all military equipment and converted into something between a hospital, school, and a temporary housing complex. Lisa had spent the last 14 days working 20-hour shifts to make this happen. Her assistant Kevin Palmer had barely slept at all. "The translator's software is still glitchy," Kevin said, walking up to her with a tablet in his hands and dark circles under his eyes. "The Kelthar dialects are giving us trouble. We've got 3 different subspecies and they all speak slightly different languages." "What about the universal translators the Council uses?" Lisa asked. "They're biologically locked. It's only work for Council species. Apparently that's by design." Kevin's voice carried an edge of bitterness. "Can't have the outcasts communicating to Isley." Lisa looked across the common area where groups of refugees were clustered together, mostly sticking to their own species. A group of Vexians sat in one corner, their chitinous plates clicking softly as they talked. The Erothi had claimed a spot near the windows where the sunlight made their bioluminescent skin glow brighter. The Kelthar families stayed close together, their scaled children peeking out from behind their parents. "Okay," Lisa said. "Let's tackle this one step at a time. Basic needs first." "Is everyone fed?" "Well, yes, though figuring out nutritional requirements has been interesting. Turns out Vexians are basically carnivores, but they can digest certain plant proteins. The Orothi need minerals we don't normally include in food, so we've been grinding up supplements. The Kelthar are the easiest. They can eat almost anything." "Medical issues?" "Dr. Chen has set up a clinic in the East Wing. Most of the critical cases have been stabilized. A lot of malnutrition, some old injuries that healed wrong, stress-related problems. Nothing we can't handle." Lisa made notes on her own tablet. "What about the integration program? Are they ready to start learning?" Kevin gestured toward a large room that had been set up with chairs and display screens. "We've got the first session starting in an hour. Basic English lessons, introduction to Earth culture, legal rights and protections. I've prepared materials, but honestly, Lisa, I have no idea if this is going to work." "It has to work," Lisa said firmly, "because the alternative is sending them back out there to die, and that's not happening." She walked through the facility, observing and making mental notes. The refugees were clean now, dressed in simple clothes that the military had provided. They looked healthier than they had when they first arrived, but there was still a haunted quality to their eyes. These were people who had been rejected by everyone they knew, thrown away like garbage. Lisa found Kesra in the library section, her 4 arms handling multiple books at once while her 3 eyes scanned the pages rapidly. The Vexian had recovered well from her injuries, though one arm was still in a support brace. "Finding anything interesting?" Lisa asked. Kesra looked up. "Everything is interesting. Your species has such a chaotic approach to information storage. Fiction mixed with fact, opinions presented as truth, contradictions everywhere. It is wonderful." Lisa smiled. "I suppose it must seem messy compared to the Council databases." "The Council databases are clean because they only contain approved information. Your libraries contain everything, even the things that make your leaders uncomfortable. This is very strange to me. On Earth, we believe people have the right to access information and make up their own minds. Even if they make the wrong decision, it's still their choice to make." Kesra set down the books carefully. "On Vexor, my caste was not permitted to read. Knowledge was considered dangerous for those meant to serve. I learned in secret, and when I was discovered, I was exiled." She paused. "Your world is very different from mine." Different can be good or bad. But it is interesting, and I have not been interested in anything for a long time. Lisa left Kesra to her reading and continued her rounds. In the recreational area, she found something that made her stop and stare. Zilk, the young Orthy artist, had been given art supplies by one of the staff members. He had covered an entire wall with a mural, showed the refugee ship approaching. Earth, the blue planet growing larger, and in the corner, human figures reaching out with open hands. A small crowd had gathered to watch Zilk work. Some were refugees, others were human staff members. No one was speaking, but everyone seemed mesmerized by the painting taking shape. "He's talented," said a voice beside her. Lisa turned to find Commander Paul Dixon, the security chief assigned to the facility. He was a career military man in his 40s, with the kind of face that looked like it had forgotten how to smile years ago. "He is," Lisa agreed. On his homeworld, he wasn't allowed to create art because he was born with the wrong skin pattern. Paul watched the young alien paint for a moment. "It's stupid." "Yes, it is." "The council species must be idiots, throwing away talented people because of genetics." Paul shook his head. "We've got 3 Vexian engineers who have already identified 6 ways to improve our waste recycling system." The Kelther mathematician, the one with the scarred scales, he solved a fusion containment problem our scientists had been stuck on for 3 years, and they were all considered defective. "Does that surprise you?" Lisa asked carefully. She knew Paul had been opposed to taking in the refugees at first, citing security concerns. "Yeah, it does. I expected trouble. Expected criminals or radicals who would cause problems. Instead, I got engineers, teachers, scientists, and artists. People who just want a chance to live." Paul's jaw tightened. "The council calls them genetic refuse. That's not just wrong, it's evil." Lisa felt a small surge of hope. If Paul was coming around, others would too. The first integration class began right on schedule. Lisa stood at the front of the room while Kevin operated the display screens. Over 100 refugees had shown up, filling every seat and standing along the walls. Translator devices hummed and clicked as they converted her words into various languages. "Welcome," Lisa began. "This is the start of your integration into Earth society. Over the next several weeks, you'll learn our language, our customs, and your rights as residents here. Yes, rights. On Earth, we believe every intelligent being has certain fundamental rights that cannot be taken away." She put up a slide showing the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. "We wrote this document over 200 years ago. It says that all humans are born free and equal in dignity and rights. When we made first contact with alien species, we expanded this to include all intelligent beings." A Kelther in the front row raised a clawed hand. "What does this mean for us?" "We are not human. It means you have the same rights as any human. The right to life, liberty, and security. Freedom from torture and slavery. It's the right to work, to education, to participate in cultural life. Cannot be discriminated against because of your species, your genetics, your beliefs, or where you came from." The room was silent. Then a voice from the back, translated through a device, said, "This cannot be true." "No world operates this way. Earth does," Lisa said simply. "We're not perfect at it. We still have problems and inequalities we're working to fix. But these are our ideals and we try to live up to them." Another hand went up, this time an Orthy with purple patterns. "What must we do to earn these rights?" "Nothing. You already have them. They're not something you earn, they're something you possess just by existing." The translator devices buzzed with multiple conversations at once as the refugees talked among themselves. Lisa could see disbelief, confusion, and hope mixing together on their alien faces. Kevin leaned close to her. "I think we just broke their understanding of how society works." "Good," Lisa whispered back. That's exactly what we need to do." Over the next week, the integration program continued. The refugees learned English at a remarkable pace, especially the younger ones. They studied Earth history, though many were shocked by humanity's violent past. They seemed particularly disturbed by wars fought over resources, territory, and ideology. "Your species fights itself?" Kesra asked during one session. "This is common. It used to be," Lisa admitted. "We've gotten better at resolving conflicts peacefully, but we still have a long way to go." But you fight for ideals, not just for genetic dominance. This is strange. What do you mean? Kesra's translator clicked. In the galaxy, war is usually about one species trying to prove genetic superiority over another. But humans fight each other over ideas, over different visions of how society should work. You kill each other over thoughts? Suppose that's one way to look at it, Lisa said uncomfortably. It is terrible, Kesra continued, but also hopeful. If you fight over ideas, that means ideas can change. We fought only over genetics, nothing could ever change. Lisa hadn't thought about it that way before. The refugees began to venture out of the facility in small groups, always with human guides. They visited nearby towns, met ordinary people, saw how human society functioned. Most reactions were positive, though there were incidents. Ambassador Helen Wright had faced difficult negotiations before, but nothing quite like this. She stood in the Galactic Council chamber, a massive room that seemed designed to make individual beings feel small and insignificant. Holographic displays surrounded her, each showing the face of a council representative from various species across the galaxy. Their expressions ranged from hostile to disgusted. The Torvan counselor spoke first, his 3 eyes blazing with anger. Ambassador Wright, Earth has violated every protocol of civilized society. You have taken in genetic refuse, social deviants, and criminals that the Council has rightfully expelled. Helen kept her voice calm and professional. With respect, Counselor, we have taken in refugees who were abandoned to die in neutral space. They committed no crimes. They simply failed to meet your arbitrary genetic standards. Arbitrary. The Shroth representative's voice came out as a hiss through her translator. These standards have maintained galactic order for 10,000 years. Species remain pure. Societies remain stable. What you call arbitrary, we call essential. Essential, Helen repeated. You consider it essential to exile engineers because they're too intelligent for their caste? To banish artists because they have the wrong skin patterns? To throw away families because they protested the murder of their children? The chamber erupted in angry voices, multiple species talking over each other. Helen waited for the noise to die down. She had prepared for this reaction. The Torvan counselor raised a hand for silence. You are young as a species, Ambassador. You do not understand the chaos that comes from genetic mixing and social disorder. We have learned through millennia that strict hierarchy maintains peace. Peace for whom? Helen asked. Not for the 300 refugees currently under our protection. They found no peace in your system. They are defective, the Shroth representative said flatly. Every society produces waste. It must be disposed of properly. Helen felt anger rise in her throat but forced it down. On Earth, we don't consider people waste. We judge individuals by their actions and character, not by their genetics or birth circumstances. Then Earth is foolish, another counselor said. This one from a species Helen didn't immediately recognize. And you will pay for this foolishness. The Council votes to impose immediate economic sanctions. No Council species will trade with Earth. No Earth vessels will be permitted in Council space. You are hereby isolated until you return the undesirables. Helen had expected this, but hearing it officially still sent a chill through her. Earth's economy had become increasingly dependent on alien technology and trade. These sanctions would hurt badly. We will not return them, Helen said quietly. They have requested asylum under our laws, and we have granted it. Earth doesn't condemn people for circumstances beyond their control, and Earth will suffer the consequences. This session is concluded. The holographic displays vanished one by one, leaving Helen alone in the empty chamber. She took a deep breath and activated her communication device. Right to Earth command. The Council has imposed full sanctions. It's official now. President Martinez's voice came through. Understood. Come home, Helen. We have work to do. Back on Earth, the news of the sanctions spread quickly. Financial markets reacted immediately, with stocks dropping as traders worried about the loss of alien technology and trade routes. News channels ran constant coverage, with experts debating whether Earth had made the right choice. Jake Morrison watched the news coverage from his quarters on the defense station. His second-in-command, Amy Burke, sat across from him, her face troubled. The economists are saying this could cost us decades of progress, Amy said. All the technology we were getting from council species, the trade agreements, the scientific exchanges, it's all gone now. I know, Jake said. But what was the alternative? Send those people back to die? Some people are saying yes. Amy gestured to the screen where a news anchor was interviewing a senator, who was calling the refugee decision reckless and irresponsible. They're saying we should have considered Earth's interests first. Jake turned off the screen. Earth's interests include being the kind of world we can be proud of. That means not abandoning people who need help just because it's inconvenient. I agree with you, Amy said. But a lot of people don't. The protests are getting bigger. There was a riot outside the Montana facility yesterday. Jake stood up and walked to the window. Outside, stars burned in the darkness, indifferent to the problems of the beings living among them. Are the refugees safe? Commander Dixon has the facility locked down. No one gets in without clearance. But Jake, this is getting ugly. People are scared about the economy, about the future. They're taking it out on the refugees. Then we need to show them that the refugees are helping, not hurting. Down at the Montana facility, Lisa was dealing with the aftermath of the riot. Windows had been broken, and someone had spray-painted hateful messages on the outer walls. The refugees were frightened, gathered in the central common area where they felt safest in numbers. We should leave, Kesra said to Lisa. We are causing problems for your people. It would be better if we went back to space. And go where? Lisa asked. Every world has rejected you. The council wants you dead, and we will die, Kesra said simply. But at least we will not drag Earth down with us. No, Lisa's voice was firm. That's not happening. You're under our protection, and that means something. Kevin rushed into the room, his tablet in hand. Lisa, we've got a situation. The power grid in the western sector is failing. Engineers say it's a cascade failure in the fusion reactor system. If they can't fix it in the next few hours, half the state will lose power. Can they fix it? They don't know. The problem is with the magnetic containment field harmonics. It's a complex calculation, and they need to get it right the first time, or the whole system could collapse. Kesra's translator clicked as she stood up. I can help with this. What? Kevin looked confused. Magnetic field harmonics for fusion systems. This is basic engineering for Vexian technology. We have been using fusion power for 3,000 years. I can solve this problem. Lisa looked at Kesra, then at Kevin. Get her on the phone with the engineering team. Now, 10 minutes later, Kesra was in a video conference with Earth's top fusion engineers, her forearms gesturing as she explained complex mathematical formulas through her translator. The human engineers looked skeptical at first, but as Kesra worked through the problem, their expressions changed to amazement. She's right, one of them said. We've been approaching the harmonic balance wrong. If we adjust the field strength in this pattern, the oscillation should stabilize. How did you see this? Another engineer asked Kesra on Vexer. I was disposal cast, but I studied engineering in secret. Fusion reactors were my specialty before my intelligence was discovered and I was exiled. The human engineers looked at each other. You're telling us you're smarter than our best scientists, and your own people threw you away for it? Yes. The council believes intelligence in the wrong caste is a genetic disorder that must be eliminated. That's insane, the lead engineer said. Okay, we're implementing your solution. Give us 20 minutes. Lisa watched the whole exchange with a mixture of pride and sadness. Kesra had just potentially saved half a state from power failure, and she had been considered worthless by her own society. 23 minutes later, Kevin burst into the room with a huge smile. It worked. The grid is stable. They're calling it the most elegant solution to a fusion containment problem in 50 years. Word spread quickly. The news channels that had been running constant coverage of the sanctions suddenly had a new story. An alien refugee had just solved a critical infrastructure problem. The same beings the council called defective had saved human lives and prevented a disaster. Commander D. Paul Dixon called an emergency meeting with his security team. The narrative is changing, he said. People are starting to ask questions about what else these refugees can do. We need to capitalize on this. How? One of his officers asked. By showing everyone what I've been seeing for weeks. These aren't freeloaders or criminals. They're skilled professionals who can contribute to our society. We need to get them out there working alongside humans, showing their value. Over the next few days, changes began happening rapidly. Vexian engineers were brought in to consult on various infrastructure projects. Kelthar mathematicians joined research teams at universities. Orathi biologists began working with marine research centers. Their unique understanding of bioluminescence opening new avenues of study. Zilk's artwork was featured in a major gallery in New York. His paintings of Earth, his lost homeworld, drew crowds of thousands. Art critics called his work hauntingly beautiful. A bridge between human and alien perspectives, Jake received a call from Admiral Harris. Morrison, I'm seeing remarkable things in the reports. These refugees are making real contributions. Sir. That's what I've been trying to tell everyone. Well, the president has noticed too. She wants to make a statement showing that Earth made the right choice. But we need more examples. Can you coordinate with the Montana facility? Get me success stories. Jake worked with Lisa and her team to compile reports. The data was impressive. The alarm started blaring at 3 in the morning, jolting Jake Morrison from a deep sleep. He was dressed and running toward the command center before his mind fully processed what was happening. The station lights had shifted to emergency red, and crew members were rushing through the corridors. Report, Jake barked as he entered the command center. Amy Burke was already at her station, her fingers flying across the controls. Solar flare, Captain? Massive one. Class X40, possibly higher. It's heading straight for Earth. Jake felt his stomach drop. Time to impact? 6 hours. Maybe 7. Amy pulled up the data on the main screen. The solar flare was enormous, a wave of radiation and charged particles that would hit Earth's magnetic field like a hammer. Sir, our orbital stations aren't rated for this kind of radiation. The shields will fail. How many people are on the stations? 43,000 across all platforms, including this one. Jake grabbed his communication device. Get me Admiral Harris. And someone wake up Chief Engineer Watson. We need solutions, and we need them now. 20 minutes later, Jake was in a video conference with Earth's top scientists and military leadership. The news was not good. The shields weren't designed for this level of radiation. Chief Engineer Greg Watson explained, his face pale. We'd need to recalibrate the entire defense grid. Strengthen the electromagnetic fields, and adjust the harmonic frequencies. That kind of work normally takes weeks, if 6 hours, Admiral Harris said grimly. What can we do in 6 hours? Evacuate, someone suggested. Get everyone off the stations and down to Earth. There's not enough time or transport capacity, another officer said. We'd get maybe half of them down before the flare hits. Jake closed his eyes, thinking hard. Then an idea struck him. The refugees. Kesra mentioned that Vexor has an unstable star. They must have experience with solar radiation protection. Greg Watson looked skeptical. Captain, with respect, this is beyond complex. It's not just one calculation. It's thousands of interconnected systems that all need to be adjusted simultaneously. Even if they have theoretical knowledge, they've never worked with our technology. Do we have a better option? Jake asked. The silence on the call was his answer. Get Kesra and her engineering team here immediately, Admiral Harris ordered. Watson, you'll work with them. Morrison, coordinate from your station. We don't have time to waste. Lisa got the call 40 minutes later. She found Kesra already awake, standing by the window and looking at the stars. Somehow, the Vexian had sensed something was wrong. Earth is in danger, Kesra said before Lisa could speak. I can feel it. The star is angry. How did you know? On Vexor, we learned to sense stellar disturbances. Our sun has been unstable for thousands of generations. We must, or we die. Kesra turned to face Lisa. You need help? Yes. Can you do it? Can you help protect the orbital stations? Kesra's 3 eyes blinked in sequence. I do not know. Earth's technology is different from ours, but I will try. Wake the other Vexian engineers. And the Kelther mathematician Vorn, we will need his computational skills. Within an hour, a team of refugee engineers was being transported to the Earth Defense Station. Kesra arrived with 3 other Vexians, all former engineers who had been exiled for various genetic crimes. Vorn came with 2 other Kelther who specialized in complex mathematics. Even young Zilk was there. He was brought along because Kesra insisted his artistic mind could see patterns others might miss. Greg. Watson met them in the main engineering bay, surrounded by dozens of human engineers and technicians. The room was filled with holographic displays showing the shield systems, power grids, and electromagnetic field generators across all the orbital platforms. We need to boost shield strength by at least 300%, Greg explained. But if we just increase power, the harmonic frequencies will become unstable. The shields will tear themselves apart before the radiation even hits. Kesra moved to the displays, her forearms reaching out to manipulate different screens simultaneously. Her translator clicked rapidly as she absorbed information. Show me your power distribution network. As Greg brought up the data, Kesra began working with a speed that made the human engineers step back in amazement. She pulled up equations, ran simulations, and called out instructions to the other Vexians in her native language. Vorn joined her, his clawed hands working a separate console. The Kelther's mathematical abilities were legendary among the refugees, and he proved it now by solving equations that would have taken human computers hours to process. The problem is not just power, Kesra said after 15 minutes of intense work. The problem is distribution. Your shields operate on a fixed frequency pattern. This is efficient, but inflexible. For this level of radiation, you need adaptive harmonics. Adaptive harmonics. Greg looked confused. Our systems aren't designed for that. They are not designed for it, but they can do it. Look here. Kesra pulled up a schematic of the shield generator. This component here, you use it only for backup power routing. But if we reprogram it, it can function as a harmonic modulator. The shields will be able to adjust their frequency in real time, flowing with the radiation instead of trying to block it directly. That's brilliant, one of the human engineers said. But the programming required, I am already writing it, Vorn said, his claws clicking across his keyboard at impossible speed. The mathematical framework is clear. Implementation will take 2 hours. We have 5 hours until the flare hits, Amy reported from her station. And that's if our estimates are accurate. The engineering bay became a whirlwind of activity. Human and alien engineers worked side by side, speaking different languages, but united by common purpose. Kesra directed teams across all the orbital platforms through video links, her 3 eyes tracking multiple conversations simultaneously. The other Vexian engineers implemented her designs, moving from station to station to make physical modifications. Jake watched from the command center as the work progressed. 3 hours passed, then 4. The solar flare was visible now on the monitoring equipment, a wall of destruction racing toward them. How much longer? Jake asked, keeping his voice calm despite the tension he felt.
Oh.
The primary stations are ready, Greg reported, but the smaller platforms are still being reconfigured. We need another hour. Don't have another hour. The flare will hit in 43 minutes. On the main engineering display, Kesra's face appeared. Behind her, Jake could see her team working frantically. Captain Morrison, we can do this, but we need to prioritize. Tell me which platforms have the most people. We will ensure those are protected first. Jake made the hardest decision of his career, identifying which stations would get full protection and which would have to make do with whatever they could finish in time. 30 minutes before impact. Zilk suddenly spoke up. The young Orathi had been silent until now, watching the displays with his large eyes. The pattern is wrong, he said in his soft voice. Everyone turned to look at him. What pattern? Warren asked. Zilk moved to one of the displays, his glowing hands gesturing at the shield configuration. This, the energy flow, it moves like water trying to go uphill. Inefficient. It should move like this. He traced a different pattern in the air, and his bioluminescence left glowing trails that showed a spiraling design. Kesra stared at the pattern, then at Zilk. The artist sees what the engineer missed. This distribution pattern would reduce energy loss by 17%. She immediately began recalculating. Vorn, can you rewrite the algorithms to match this flow? Already doing it, Vorn replied. The new pattern was implemented across all platforms with 12 minutes to spare. Engineers scrambled to their safety positions. Refugees and humans alike found secure locations and waited. Jake stood in the command center, watching the incoming flare on the monitors. All stations report status. One by one, the platforms reported ready. The shields were at maximum strength. Harmonics were stable, and every person was accounted for. Impact in 30 seconds, Amy said quietly. Jake found himself thinking about how strange this moment was. 6 months ago, these refugees didn't exist in Earth's awareness. Now they were the only reason Earth might survive. The next few minutes, 10 seconds. Command center was absolutely silent. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. The solar flare hit like the fist of an angry god. Every screen in the command center went white with the overload of radiation. The station shuddered, and Jake heard alarms blaring throughout the facility. For 3 terrible seconds, the shields held at the edge of failure. Groaning under the assault, then the adaptive harmonics kicked in. Jake watched in amazement as the shield frequencies began shifting, adjusting, flowing with the radiation instead of fighting it directly. The energy that would have torn through the shields was instead redirected, channeled, dispersed into space harmlessly. Shields holding, Amy reported, her voice shaking with relief. All platforms report stable. Radiation levels dropping as the main flare passes. The command center erupted in cheers. Engineers hugged each other. Officers who maintained professional composure for decades were openly crying with relief. Jake opened a channel to engineering. Watson, Kesra, everyone. You did it. All stations are safe. All personnel accounted for. On the screen, he saw Kesra surrounded by exhausted human and alien engineers. 3 months after the solar flare crisis, Ambassador Helen Wright returned to the Galactic Council chamber. This time, she was not alone. Behind her stood Kesra, Vorn, Zilk, and representatives from 5 other refugee species. They wore simple Earth clothing, but they stood tall. No longer the broken beings who had arrived in a dying ship 9 months ago. The council chamber was fuller than usual. Word had spread that Earth was making a formal presentation, and representatives from species across the galaxy wanted to witness it. Even those who supported the sanctions were curious about what humanity would say. The Torvin counselor opened the session with barely concealed hostility. Ambassador Wright, you requested this hearing. The council has granted it, though we fail to see what you could possibly say to justify your continued violation of galactic law. Helen stepped forward, her voice calm and clear. Counselors, I am not here to justify anything. I am here to show you what you have lost by clinging to outdated ideas about genetic worth. She gestured, and holographic displays filled the chamber. Images appeared showing the solar flare crisis, the engineering solutions, the lives saved. Data scrolled past showing scientific breakthroughs, technological advances, and cultural contributions made by the refugees in just 9 months. These beings you call defective have accomplished more in 9 months on Earth than many council species accomplish in decades. They have saved lives, advanced science, created beauty, and enriched our society in ways we are still discovering. Propaganda, the Shroth representative hissed. Carefully selected examples that ignore the costs. What costs? Helen asked. The economic sanctions you imposed? Yes, they hurt our economy, but we have adapted. We have learned to be self-sufficient in ways we never were before. Your sanctions made us stronger, not weaker. Kesra stepped forward then, her forearms moving in a gesture of formal greeting to the council. When she spoke, her translator carried her words clearly through the chamber. Honored counselors, I was born on Vexor. I was disposal caste, meant to handle waste for my entire life. When my intelligence was discovered, I was declared defective and exiled. According to Vexor law, I should not exist. She paused, her three eyes moving across the assembled representatives. But I do exist. And in the past 9 months, I have designed waste recycling systems that will save Earth billions in resources. I have solved fusion containment problems that their best scientists could not crack. I have trained the next generation of engineers in techniques my people developed over millennia. Tell me, counselors, am I truly defective? Or did Vexer simply throw away someone who could have made them better? The chamber was silent. Helen saw several of the younger species representatives leaning forward. Clearly interested in what Kesra was saying, Vorn spoke next, his clawed hands folded respectfully. I am Kelther. I was exiled because I have 7 fingers on each hand instead of 6. This genetic variation, according to my government, made me unfit for society. Yet with these 7 fingers, I have solved mathematical problems that have stumped researchers for generations. I have helped Earth develop new computational methods that will benefit them for centuries. My people called me broken. Earth called me brilliant. Which assessment was correct? One by one, the refugee representatives spoke. Each told their story. Each showed what they had accomplished. Each asked the council the same question in different ways. If we are worthless, why have we achieved so much? Zilk was the last to speak. The young Orothi's bioluminescence pulsed nervously as he addressed the most powerful beings in the galaxy. I am an artist. On my world, only those with red patterns may create art. I have blue patterns. So I was forbidden to paint, to draw, to express the images in my mind. The council said this was proper, that genetic roles must be maintained. He gestured, and a holographic image appeared. It was his mural from the Montana facility, showing Earth and the refugees coming together. The image was stunning, full of emotion and technical skill that made even the hostile counselors pause. Art is not about genetics, Zilk said softly. It is about vision, about feeling, about seeing the world in new ways. Earth understood this. They gave me brushes and told me to create. And I have created beauty that touches human hearts. Was this wrong? Should I have been left to die in space because my skin is the wrong color? The Torvin counselor shifted uncomfortably. These are individual cases. Exceptions that prove the rule. How many exceptions do you need? Helen asked, before you admit the rule is wrong. We have 300 refugees. Each one has a similar story. Each one is contributing to our society. At what point do you acknowledge that your system for determining worth is flawed? Never, the Shroth representative said flatly. The council has maintained order for 10,000 years. We will not change because one young species thinks they know better. But Helen noticed something. Not all the counselors were nodding in agreement. Some were silent, thoughtful. The Nolari representative was watching the refugees with open curiosity. A representative from a species called the Dreth was taking notes. This session is concluded, the Torvin counselor announced. Earth remains in violation of council law. The sanctions will continue until the undesirables are returned. There will be no further discussion. As the holographic displays began to fade, the Nolari representative spoke up suddenly. I request a vote. The chamber went silent. The Torvin counselor's 3 eyes widened. A vote on what? On whether the council should reconsider its genetic purity laws? Specifically, whether we should study Earth's approach to determine if there are benefits to genetic diversity and social mobility? That is ridiculous, the Shroth representative said. Such a vote would never pass. Then call the vote and prove it. The Nolari said calmly. The Torvin counselor looked like he wanted to refuse, but council law was clear. Any member could call for a vote on policy matters. Very well. All in favor of reconsidering genetic purity laws? Helen held her breath as the votes were cast. She knew it would not pass. The council was too old to set in its ways. But even a few votes would show that change was possible. The results appeared on the displays. 17 species voted in favor. 43 voted against. The motion failed by a huge margin, just as expected, but 17 species had voted for change. 17 out of 60 council members had publicly questioned the system that had governed the galaxy for millennia. It was not victory, but it was a beginning. Back on Earth, news of the council sessions spread rapidly. The refugees had spoken directly to the galaxy's most powerful beings and challenged them openly. Humans watched the recordings with pride, seeing people they now considered neighbors and friends standing up for themselves with dignity and courage. Jake Morrison watched from the defense station as another ship appeared on the long-range sensors. This one was much smaller than the Wanderer had been, carrying perhaps 30 refugees who had heard about Earth and were seeking asylum. "Should I grant them docking permission?" Amy asked. Jake smiled. "Yes, and prepare quarters for them. Looks like word is spreading." Over the next 3 months, more ships arrived. Not hundreds, not yet, but a steady stream. Refugees from species across the galaxy, hearing that Earth judged people by their character rather than their genetics. Each ship brought new skills, new perspectives, new possibilities. Lisa expanded the integration program to handle the growing numbers. The Montana facility was joined by 2 more centers in Canada and Australia. The curriculum improved as they learned what worked and what didn't. Some refugees adapted quickly, others needed more time and support. But all of them found something on Earth they had never known before: acceptance. Kesra took a position as chief engineer at a major research facility. Her forearms and quick mind made her invaluable, and she trained dozens of human engineers in Vexian techniques. She still missed her homeworld sometimes, but she had built a life on Earth that mattered. Vorn became a professor at a prestigious university, teaching mathematics to students who saw his 7 fingers as interesting rather than defective. His research papers were being published in journals across Earth. Advancing human understanding of complex systems, Zilk's art hung in galleries around the world. His unique perspective, combining Orethi aesthetics with human influences, created a new style that critics called hauntingly beautiful. Human artists studied his techniques, and he studied theirs, creating a cultural exchange that enriched both species. Commander Paul Dixon submitted a report to Earth Military Command recommending that they actively recruit refugees with military experience. Not to build an army, but to learn from people who understood alien technology and tactics. His recommendation was approved, and Earth's defense capabilities began improving as refugees shared. Knowledge Ambassador Helen received a private message from the Nolari counselor 6 months after the historic vote. 17 votes have become 23. More species are asking questions. Some are conducting quiet experiments with social mobility. The council may not change in my lifetime, but it will change. Earth has shown us a different path, and some of us are brave enough to walk it. Helen shared the message with President Martinez. "It's working," the president said. "Slowly, but it's working."